On April 1st, 2026, NASA launched 4 astronauts beyond Earth orbit for the first time in over 50 years. No buildup, no gentle countdown, just a wall of fire at Kennedy Space Center and 4 human beings strapped inside an Orion capsule, climbing away from everything they knew. Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen were officially bound for the moon. And the world watched with 3 million pairs of eyes locked to a live stream, waiting to see if the most expensive and most delayed comeback in space history would actually work. It did. And now, with the crew 4 days into their journey and approaching the moon at this very moment, the questions that were never fully answered before launch are getting louder. Following a successful translunar injection burn on April 2nd, the crew entered a figure-8 trajectory that will carry them around the moon and back to Earth. That burn, firing for 5 minutes and 50 seconds, was described by NASA as the point of no return. Once it was complete, the crew was committed. There was no option to abort back to Earth orbit. They were going. The burn appeared perfectly executed to the millions watching around the world. Jeremy Hansen spoke to those watching from his speeding capsule and said the crew could firmly feel the power of everyone's perseverance during every second of that burn. It was a composed, measured statement, exactly the kind of statement you make when you know the cameras are watching and you understand that what you are doing is larger than yourself. But here is what NASA has not been fully transparent about, and it is not a single thing. It is a pattern of decisions, revisions, and carefully worded announcements that together paint a picture of a program under enormous pressure, moving faster than its own infrastructure can comfortably support, and managing public expectations with a precision that rivals the orbital calculations themselves. Shortly after launch, a communications issue emerged. The crew could hear mission control in Houston, but those on Earth could not hear the crew's responses for a period of time. NBC News NASA Administrator Reid Wiseman addressed it at the post-launch press conference, saying engineers determined the brief loss of two-way communications was due to a ground configuration issue involving the tracking and data relay satellite system, and that the issue was rectified quickly with no impact to mission operations. That explanation is almost certainly accurate, but it is also the kind of explanation that raises a quiet follow-on question. If a ground configuration issue can cut communications with a crewed deep space mission 51 minutes after launch, what does that say about the readiness of the infrastructure supporting everything that comes after this? That question matters because Artemis 2 is not the destination. It is the proof of concept for a program whose timeline has been restructured, renamed, and revised so many times in the past 3 months alone that even people following it closely have struggled to keep track. On February 27, 2026, NASA Administrator Reid Wiseman confirmed a revised mission plan that reassigned Artemis 4, planned for 2028, as the first potential lunar landing mission. This came as a direct reversal of what Artemis 3 had been planned to accomplish. The original Artemis 3 was supposed to be the landing, the moonwalk, the historic moment. Under the new plan, the first lunar landing would be attempted on Artemis 4 in 2028, with the possibility of an Artemis 5 in late 2028 as well. Why the change? The official explanation is that NASA wants to move faster by adding intermediate steps. Wiseman said the new mission would allow NASA to move at a faster rate as it faces competition from China, and added that NASA must standardize its approach, increase flight rates safely, and execute on the president's national space policy. What that framing conveniently omits is that the restructuring happened directly in response to failures and delays in the hardware that was supposed to carry astronauts down to the surface. The Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel, NASA's independent oversight group, warned that programmatic and technical risks with the human landing system had continued to emerge, and that these difficulties cast doubt on the current Artemis 3 timeline and the feasibility of its mission goals. In other words, the lander was not ready. The restructuring was not acceleration, it was acknowledgement. The new Artemis 3, now targeting mid-2027, will be designed to test out systems and operational capabilities in low Earth orbit to prepare for an Artemis 4 landing in 2028. It will rendezvous and dock with lunar landers from SpaceX and Blue Origin in Earth orbit. Not at the moon, not on the surface, but in the relative safety of low Earth orbit. NASA is calling this analogous to Apollo 9, the 1969 mission that tested the lunar module in Earth orbit before the Apollo 11 landing. That is a fair comparison. It is also a reminder of how far back the timeline has been pushed. Meanwhile, the crew of Artemis 2 is doing something that has not been done by any living human being. They will fly as close as 8,000 kilometers from the lunar surface on April 6th, close enough to see the ancient craters in the gray volcanic plains with unaided human eyes for the first time in over 50 years. The lunar science team has begun building a lunar targeting plan that will guide what the crew observes during an approximately 6-hour observation window on April 6th, including documenting craters, ancient lava flows, and cracks created as the moon's outer layer shifted over time. One feature being added to the plan is a solar eclipse lasting nearly an hour toward the end of the flyby window. 4 human beings will watch an eclipse from lunar distance. That is a sentence that requires a moment to sit with. And yet, the coverage around this mission has spent more time discussing schedules and competitive positioning than it has discussing what is actually happening to these 4 people right now. Victor Glover became the first person of color to travel beyond low Earth orbit. Christina Koch became the first woman to do the same. Jeremy Hansen became the first non-American citizen to reach lunar distance. These are firsts that belong to history, not just to NASA press releases, but they have been announced and moved past with a speed that reflects the relentless forward motion of a program that cannot afford to slow down and absorb what it is doing. Here's where you should pause and ask yourself something honestly. Do you believe NASA is giving you the full picture, not the telemetry data, not the orbital mechanics, the full picture of why the landing slipped to Artemis 4, why the communication system had a configuration issue on launch day, why the most safety critical element of this entire program, the human landing system, remains a vehicle from a company whose recent test flights have ended in what the aerospace industry politely calls anomalies. That is the word used when a rocket explodes over the ocean. An anomaly. NASA has redirected funding previously allocated to the $5.3 billion Gateway project into a new $20 billion program called the Ignition Project, aimed at developing surface power systems, communications, and habitat modules for a permanent lunar base. That is a significant reallocation. It is also one that happened quietly, without the kind of public debate that a shift of that magnitude probably deserves. The Gateway, which was meant to be a space station in lunar orbit, serving as a staging point for surface missions, has effectively been deprioritized in favor of going directly to the surface and building from there. Whether that is the right strategic call or not, it is a fundamental change in how NASA envisions the next decade of human spaceflight. And most people who watched the Artemis 2 launch have no idea it happened. The geopolitical pressure behind all of this is real, and it is intensifying. China is methodically advancing its lunar program, aiming for a crewed landing by around 2030, and has already achieved multiple uncrewed landings, including Chang'e 6 in 2024, which returned samples from the far side of the moon. China's ambitions also involve landing crew and establishing a base at the moon's south pole, the same target as Artemis, because permanently shadowed regions there contain water ice that is scientifically and strategically critical. If NASA misses its 2028 landing target, and multiple oversight bodies have already said that timeline is extremely aggressive, there is a genuine scenario in which China reaches the moon's surface with humans before the United States returns. That would be the most consequential reversal of space leadership since Sputnik. and it is not a hypothetical. It is a risk that senior NASA officials are actively managing. While the United States is still technically ahead of China on the calendar, the gap has narrowed significantly due to the long series of delays in the Artemis program and the steady progress of China's lunar crewed space program. And the race is not won. It is happening right now in parallel with Artemis 2's 10-day journey, and the outcome is genuinely uncertain. What Artemis 2 has proven undeniably is that the core hardware works. The Space Launch System, after years of criticism over its cost and delays, performed. The Orion capsule, after the heat shield concerns that emerged following Artemis 1 and required design changes, is operating with a crew for the first time and meeting its objectives. The crew has checked out the Avatar scientific payload and is gathering critical data on life support, propulsion, and crew performance in deep space conditions. A compact flywheel exercise device weighing just 30 pounds and roughly the size of a carry-on suitcase is enabling the crew to maintain physical readiness for the demanding re-entry forces they will face on April 10th, where the capsule will enter the atmosphere at close to 25,000 miles per hour. The heat shield changes made after Artemis 1 mean the capsule will hit the atmosphere at a much steeper angle, limiting the time it experiences the harshest re-entry conditions. That is a direct response to a documented problem. NASA fixed it. That matters. And it is worth saying plainly that an organization capable of identifying a flaw in its heat shield, redesigning the re-entry profile, and successfully launching 4 humans on the result of that redesign is doing something technically extraordinary. The criticism of what is not being said should not overshadow what has been achieved. But what happens after April 10th is where the real story becomes complicated in ways that the launch coverage largely skipped past. Artemis 3 launches in mid-2027 and will conduct rendezvous and docking tests in low Earth orbit with one or both commercial landers from SpaceX and Blue Origin, and test the new Axiom Space Extravehicular Mobility Unit spacesuit. Artemis 4 follows in early 2028 as the first actual lunar landing. Artemis 5, also targeted for late 2028, would be the second landing and the beginning of moon base assembly using standardized hardware. From 2028 onward, NASA is planning at least one surface landing per year, eventually increasing to every 6 months. That is an ambition that has never been matched in the history of human spaceflight, including during the Apollo era. And it depends on commercial landers that have not yet demonstrated they can successfully dock with Orion in Earth orbit, let alone descend to and ascend from the lunar surface. It depends on spacesuits that have not yet been tested in space. It depends on a budget and a political will that have both shifted multiple times in the past 24 months. And it depends on the data being gathered right now by 4 astronauts traveling at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour toward a moon that no living human has visited since the 1970s. What Artemis 2 is at its core is a bet that the hardware holds, a bet that the data translates into successful design decisions for what follows, a bet that the schedule is achievable, the competitors do not move faster, that the budget does not collapse, and that the will to actually land humans on another world and keep them there survives the political cycles and institutional pressures and technical setbacks that have derailed every previous attempt to do exactly that in the 50 years since Apollo ended. The astronauts on that mission understand this. Victor Glover, when describing the Artemis 2 mission patch, said the crew designed it so that the letters would read as the word all, because they wanted everybody to be a part of this mission. That is not just a public relations sentiment. It is a recognition that what is happening on this mission belongs to more than NASA, more than the United States, more than any political administration that wants to claim credit for it. It belongs to the particular moment in human history when a species that evolved on one planet first began, seriously and systematically, to extend its presence to others. The moon is approximately 384,000 kilometers away. Somewhere between here and there, 4 human beings are traveling toward it in a capsule the size of a small living room, carrying with them the accumulated engineering knowledge of tens of thousands of people, the unresolved questions of a program that has been delayed and revised and restructured more times than anyone in leadership will comfortably admit, and the weight of a 52-year gap that represents, depending on your perspective, either the greatest pause in human exploration history or simply the amount of time it took for the conditions to be right to try again. NASA is not saying everything. It rarely does, but what it is saying with the trajectory of 4 human beings arcing silently toward the lunar far side is that this time the intention is to stay. If this kind of direct, no fluff coverage of what is actually happening in space exploration matters to you, subscribe right now so you never miss an update. Leave a comment below telling me what you think the real timeline for a lunar landing looks like given everything you just heard. And if this broke something open for you that the mainstream coverage left closed, share it. That is the only way this kind of work reaches the people who need it. Thank you for watching.